Tragedy struck Manchester United on February 6, 1958. 8 United players and 3 staff, as well as 8 sports journalists including the Manchester Evening News' Tom Jackson, lost their lives in a plane crash in Munich, Germany, as the team were returning from a European Cup game against Red Star Belgrade. 23 people died in total as a result of the tragedy, including United greats Duncan Edwards and Tommy Taylor, and City's legendary goalkeeper Frank Swift. What happened? Manchester United had been to Yugoslavia to play in a European Cup tie against Red Star Belgrade. The squad and others on board set off for home on a chartered British European Airways plane the following day, February 6, 1958. The aircraft, an Airspeed Ambassador II, stopped in Munich to refuel. Engine issues led to 2 aborted takeoffs following refueling. By the time a third takeoff attempt was made, snow had covered the runway with slush, and the aircraft crashed through a fence at the end of the runway and into a house. 7 players died at the scene. Duncan Edwards died in hospital a fortnight later, while others including Bobby Charlton and manager Sir Matt Busby were gravely injured but would recover. The crash was originally blamed on pilot error, and German authorities embarked on legal action against Captain James Thane, who survived the crash. The other pilot, Captain Kenneth Raymond, died from his injuries. Subsequent investigations, however, determined that the slush on the runway had slowed down the aircraft, leaving it with not enough speed to leave the ground and not enough runway to abort takeoff. You can read air accident investigation reports relating to the crash here. Timeline. You can also see a timeline of the disaster below with our interactive story map, detailing where and when events happened. The story of the Munich air disaster. View full-screen pictures. Click through the gallery below to see pictures from the time and instances of how the club and supporters have commemorated it since up to the present day. Munich air disaster view gallery. The victims, Manchester United players, Manchester United staff, journalists, other passengers, what the survivors said. Bill Fowlkes, as we accelerated down the runway, something told me we were not going to make it. My last memory is of pushing a pack of cards into my pocket. Sir Bobby Charlton, I didn't know where I was. I was still sitting in my seat, which had somehow been ripped from underneath the plane. I thought I'd just closed my eyes. Afterwards, Harry Gregg and Bill Fowlkes said I'd been unconscious for quarter of an hour. Harry Gregg, there was no screaming, no sounds, only the terrible shearing of metal. Something cracked my skull like a hard-boiled egg. I was hit again at the front. The salty taste of blood was in my mouth. I was afraid to put my hands to my head. Archive video. Back in the days before 24-hour breaking news, newsreels were often the way that audiences saw the first images from a news event. Many of those reports are now available to watch on YouTube. Here you can see British Movietone's first report on the disaster. Video loading. Video unavailable. Click to play. Tap to play. The video will auto-play soon. 8 Cancel play now. This raw footage by British Path shows many more scenes from the aftermath of the crash. The sad return. British Path's coverage of the bodies of the victims being flown from Germany to Manchester, while survivors including Harry Gregg and Bill Fowlkes come home too. 4 survivors of the Munich air disaster speak about their experiences of the event. One of the survivors, photographer Peter Howard, describes how he escaped from the aircraft and how he heard the Manchester United goalkeeper Harry Gregg shouting that everyone should go back and help the victims of the crash. He talks of his colleague Ted Elliott and Manchester United players Ray Wood and Albert Scanlon. Two other survivors, including Bill Fowlkes, speak of their experiences. United Captain Roger Byrne perished in the crash. His funeral at Flixton Parish Church was covered here. No sound. More stories about the disaster. Munich air disaster.